Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, sponsored by the National Health Association. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I'm delighted today to have as my guest Dr. Jeanne Schumacher. Jeanne has her doctorate in education, having taught for 35 plus years. And over these more recent years, she has kind of parlayed those incredible teaching skills into a couple of platforms that help people transition into plant-based living, healthier lifestyle, the Plant-Based Academy, Plant-Based Cape Cod, Pregnancy Advantage, and we're going to talk about all of these wonderful things. So welcome, Jeanne. Hi. Welcome to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association, the oldest organization in the world championing the extraordinary benefits of a whole plant food diet and healthy lifestyle, as well as water-only fasting. We believe that health results from healthful living and focus on evidence-based science that promotes the health of you and your loved ones, as well as the health of all animals and the environment. We feature experts from a cross-section of disciplines within the plant nutrition, vegan, psychological, environmental, and animal compassion sectors. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, the NHA's Director of Health Education.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. 35 plus years teaching. That's at least what, a Purple Heart, right? Or a Silver Star, something. Got to be something.
Right? Finishing up. This is my last year in the classroom. So,
well, Jeanne, you taught for so long, and I know you observed many things in your years of teaching that also prompted you to want to work on the health of students and the way they perform and the things affecting them. But talk a little bit about your own journey. I know you had a harrowing experience somewhere back around 2009 with your own health that kind of propelled you into moving into this kind of plant exclusive way of living and thinking. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Absolutely, because it was my starting point. I was never so sick in my life, honestly. I had over 105-degree fever, and my blood pressure was off the charts. It was like 250 over like 150. I mean, I should have stroked out, but wow. I think that was his way of going, do I have your attention? Yes, sir. You have my attention. 100%, you have my attention. And I was never so sick. I mean, I would have racking, shivering chills. This went on for a week. I was in the hospital, shivering chills, racking, just the intensity of it. And they had to put a mouth guard in my mouth because they thought I was going to, chip my teeth. I couldn't stop shivering, could not stop. And then all of a sudden it would like turn off, and the heat coming out of me was just so intense. I mean, I would sweat, the bed soaked, everything. I mean, dripping, literally dripping. And this went on they never did find out what was wrong. I really don't care. I mean, that was over $30,000 for that 1 week in the hospital. And that was just with medications and just blood work. That was it. But what was something that was truly horrific for me turned out to be a blessing in disguise. And the woman who came to attend me was not only a medical doctor, but she was a nutritionist as well, which is like, she was her own demographic back in the day. So she tended me, and she kept asking me about, what do I eat? And, I thought, I eat pretty healthy, yeah, no. But so I went to see, when I got out of the hospital, I went to see her as a nutritionist, and she started me that day on a book called Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease. And that was it, by Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn. And I haven't looked back.
So Jeanne, up to that time, you were eating pretty conventionally and when you went to that ER, you had not made any changes yet really in this direction.
Not at all.
Okay.
I mean, I thought every person who starts this journey, I ate pretty healthy. Yeah, no.
Right. All right. So that was the jump off point. And then from that point, you just started reading and what was the next steps? How did that path unfold for you?
So I started going to Plant Stock. That was when they had at the farmhouse at Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn's, the farm.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Nice. They had that for about 7 years there. And I went to every one of them. And I couldn't get enough. Any courses that I could take, through Dr. McDougall, through Pam Popper, through, whatever courses I could find or educational, I did the course through eCornell, whatever I could get my hands on so I could learn, I just soaked it up like a sponge. I mean, and that's what I've been doing for like these past years is, I have a YouTube channel, and you and I have connected on so many other times and events. And, I just want to share with other people this information. And
Yeah, you got a great style for sharing that info, and people should know that when they are able to tap into what you're doing. So, Jeanne, I know that one of the major concerns or one of your major areas of interest in research has been the toxic chemicals in personal care products. Go into a little bit of that discussion, why that's such an important piece for you, and how you got motivated to get involved in that kind of study and research. What was your motivation and interest? What piqued that interest for you?
well, it started back a while ago when I was teaching chemistry, and I was that teacher that said, "Oh, who wants to take a chemistry winter exam or do a project?" And they're like, "Whatever the project is, I'm in." Because who wants to take a chemistry exam, honestly? So, and I get it. So I let them do, and I had them do an analysis of 3 personal care products. We looked at it from different angles, from inorganic chemistry to organic, molecules, things like that. We looked on the effects of the human body, and their eyes were opened. It was like, pulling back the curtains, so much on what they were learning about and seeing how these chemicals had a huge impact on us. Profound. Simply.
So you just had them going through like the ingredient list, and then one by one you started to kind of address the ingredients that were showing up in the actual ingredient list of these products.
They did. We started out using the reference textbooks that I had found on the personal care products, and then lo and behold, the Environmental Working Group came out with their database, the cosmetic database, and
Right.
So they started using that as a reference, and it was huge. It was so profound on them, and I just kept learning more and more and more about these toxins. Like, for example, parabens. Parabens are in so many personal care products. I kid you not. And one of the biggest things about it's a chemical family, and so the ending is paraben. So if you see, like, there's methyl paraben, butyl paraben, propyl paraben, it doesn't matter. They're all bad. Some are worse than others, but they're all bad. And so these parabens are bioaccumulative, meaning they're going to stay in your body for a long period of time. And they usually, especially for women, they're going to have an impact on some place on your reproductive system. Whatever the weakest link is on your reproductive system, a lot of times it's breast cancer. And so one of the first things that they give you, when you get on the breast cancer, the treadmill, the medical treadmill, they're going to give you tamoxifen. Tamoxifen is rendered useless in the presence of parabens, and they don't tell you this. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've treated so many people with this issue, and it's like, did they not talk about diet? Did they not talk about the chemicals that, it's huge. So I think that's one of the things that I'm a biggest proponent about, especially they're having huge impacts. These chemicals are endocrine disruptors. And so if you're trying to get pregnant, you've got to get these chemicals out of your body, because that's what's causing a lot of women to become not able to conceive.
Right. I'm here with Dr. Jeanne Schumacher. We're talking about the impact of toxic chemicals in personal care products in the environment. We're going to take just a few seconds of a break to hear from our sponsor, the National Health Association, and we'll be right back. And now, to put a smile on the sponsors of the National Health Association, you're listening to the Health Science Podcast Show. I want to remind you to visit the National Health Association website, where you'll find incredible resources to support your healthy lifestyle, including plant-exclusive eating without added salt, oil, and sugar. Simply go to healthscience.org or nationalhealthassociation.org. Be sure to check out membership, which is $35 per year for those living within the U.S. and $55 for those living outside the U.S. You'll be amazed at all the information and benefits you'll receive. As a member, you're kept up to date on the latest evidence-based tools for health promotion. You'll receive the incomparable quarterly magazine Health Science, a beautiful 40-page advertising-free publication mailed to your home or offices, loaded with articles, recipes, inspirational stories, and interviews with world leaders in the fields of personal health, plant-based nutrition, water-only fasting, animal rights, and environmental support. And you'll receive details about life-changing events, such as the 2023 NHA Conference set for June 23 to the 25th, 2023 in Cleveland, Ohio, which will be the NHA's 75th annual NHA Conference. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and now back to the show. Welcome back to the Health Science Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino, and I'm here with Dr. Jeanne Schumacher, and we're involved in this incredible discussion about the impact of toxic chemicals that are all around us, truthfully, but also remarkably in a lot of personal care products that are such a big part of our lives, and the impact that they can have can actually be quite devastating. You talked at one point about the fact that some of these chemicals are water soluble, some are fat soluble. Tell people what that means and how that impacts the body.
So there's two basic chemical groups, right? So fat soluble, water soluble, and things that your body has to deal with. So if it's water soluble, it's going through your liver, kidneys, and out the body. Okay, fine. But if it's fat soluble, it's going into the fat cells. And a lot of these chemicals are bioaccumulative. They're going to stay in your system without question. And you start to build up these chemical dumps inside of you. So inside your fat, they're not just, I used to think of fat just being, hey, this blob of fat. No, it's active. It is hormonally active. And so these chemicals are having a huge impact. And actually, we're kind of like walking chemical experiments because we really don't know what happens when these all chemicals react inside your body, what impact it's going to have. But even still, like the personal care products, this one makes me crazy. So like if you have a PEG or a sodium lauryl sulfate and you put them into a container, at the end result, when they mix together in that container, they're going to create what's called a 1,4-dioxane. And that is so toxic in the environment. I mean, it's really, but they didn't put it in. And actually, there is no regulation in terms of these chemicals that are in the environment or on personal care products. There is no regulation. So they can put anything they want in there. They can add whatever, doesn't matter. And they don't have to put anything. Like the word fragrance, that one also makes me crazy because they're hiding chemicals like phthalates in there. And they're like, oh, it's proprietary information. I don't want to give that away because my competitors are going to get, oh, stop it. I can give that to an analytical chemist and tell you in 10 minutes what's in there. Stop it. So
when did poisoning people become proprietary? It's kind of interesting when you think about that.
Right?
You made a great point about fat cells, and I'll just add because not only are these chemicals often called endocrine disruptors, they're also called obesogens because they feed the epidemic of obesity in people. Because if the body can put this stuff in fat cells, it can also protect you by increasing the number of fat cells to store this toxicity. So that's a very important point because then even when you're just losing weight, if you go on a plant-based approach, as you start losing that fat, that stuff starts mobilizing from fat tissue. And you made the point, it can go into the bloodstream. The body now needs to detoxify it, and a whole range of symptoms can come up. And I think people need to know that those symptoms are part of recovery. They're not something you need to try to medicate or run away from. And I think too often that becomes the party line. I'm sick. I got these symptoms, so I need to do something to interfere when the body's really trying to just heal. In your experience with teaching, and I know one of the things for you was the whole issue of attention deficit and some of the ways that children are handled and dealt with in the school situation. Do you see that as a byproduct of also this kind of chemical exposure? Can you speak to that too, with your years of experience teaching?
Well, I've seen it in the classroom. I mean, 100%. I mean, okay, I was born in 1960, not quite up there with the dinosaurs or anything. And this is kind of what
that's me. I'm with the dinosaurs. So we'll go there later. Yes.
Okay. I knew every kid in my neighborhood. I knew them. I knew their families. I never saw an autistic child until the 1990s. That was the first time I'd run into one in a school system. Now, according to the CDC, it's 1 out of 47. And it wasn't but like maybe a year and a half ago, it was like 1 out of 58. Wow. Why in my lifetime, and I actually did a TED talk on this, why in my lifetime have I seen this radical increase of autism? And that's just autism. There's ADD, ADHD, and so many learning issues. I don't teach the way I did, when I first started teaching, because the children can't handle it. They cannot handle that level of intensity. I've had to bring down my chemistry teaching so much in the past years because it's really difficult for them to take that to the next level. I mean, without question. And I have seen it in the kids. I mean, when I was in a physical classroom, on any given day, I wouldn't have at least 30% out. 30%. I don't think there was a day once in the last 10 years that I had all students present. Not one day.
So your answer to that, so your projected answer to that why is what? Give me the big picture.
Well, I'm thinking, I mean, personally for me, I'm thinking it's the food without question and in combination. And I call it the trifecta. You know, you have to change what goes in. So food and drink, you have to change what goes on. So that's the personal care and the environmental toxins you're being exposed to. And then you have to exercise. I mean, I think of that as like the basic foundation to, I mean, there's more, don't get me wrong, but you've got to have that solid foundation without question. And once when I was able to interject, I had to really walk on eggshells because I would frequently get called in to the headmaster's office or to the upper head of school when I was last teaching, stop teaching this, teach chemistry. Okay, I am. Don't teach that, don't teach anything about health, because I was getting the kids to realize how the impact of the chemicals on them and the food. So I really had to walk on eggshells. I can almost feel like, I know a lot about T. Colin Campbell and his journey and how, classes, I totally can share that with him, how I came close to being fired on several occasions. And I really had to be careful about how I came across in the classroom. Don't teach the healthy things. Okay. But it really made me crazy, to see, because when I remember one student who had so many allergies, she literally could only eat a handful of foods. I mean, it was crazy. And she was on so many medications. And I talked to her about this, and she went plant-based. And I had her for 3 years. And she had gone to special schools for, ADD. And after she went plant-based, first of all, she healed, her gut biome healed. She was able then to start introducing more foods into her food rotation. And she now only has one nut allergy out of all of, the nut families and all her allergies. She had so many, but she became so clear-headed and so clear-focused. She did not need any more of her ADD medications. She performed. It was so incredible to see this change and how she felt. And then she went and turned around and got her mother. I held her in 10th grade crying because her dad had just died of cancer. And so I remember when she went off to college, she called me up one night crying. She's like, she wanted to follow her father's footsteps and went into business. And she called me up and she says, I hate this. And I said, what are you passionate about? What do you want? And she says, I want to help people to not get cancer. And I said, well done. And then we talked about the different paths she could take. Well, she went into nutrition and she's now she got her master's. She's a registered dietitian. She's working at the VA, helping people with cancer.
Like you, I feel for these children. It's kind of intriguing because so much of the diagnosis of these problems like AD&D is so off. It is so misdiagnosed because oftentimes it's a school nurse or somebody that decides this child is not fitting in. And then all of a sudden they're directed to all kinds of amphetamine-like medication, Ritalin, Adderall, and all of that. And yeah. I saw a statistic which you'll probably resonate with, and it'd probably be as frustrating for you. We have 5% of the world's population. We use 95% of the drugs to treat attention deficit and hyperactivity in children. Think about that, how overprescribed and overmedicated these poor children are. And it's unconscionable. It's frightening. I'm here with Dr. Jeanne Schumacher. Jeanne, let people know where they go to find you. What's the sites and what's the location you want them to go to follow you? Well,
the mothership is simplyplantbased.net. And that's the mothership. And that is my LLC. And you can find all my other programs from simplyplantbased.net. I've started the Plant-Based Academy because you're going to need support. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So let's go right into that, because I want to talk about some of those other places that we've talked about. Yeah. So the Plant-Based Academy, I see that it becomes kind of a support and educational, location for people. Talk a little bit about what motivated you to do that and how that got started and what's the status of it now? Where is it at?
Well, I started doing a lot of this with a good friend of mine, Nancy Matthews in California. And we started with, especially after Plant Pure Nation came out and the pods, in creating those pods. She created plant-based Chico. I created plant-based Westchester. Now I'm on plant-based Cape Cod. So she and I started doing these 10-day challenges, and we realized very quickly on into this that even though you're doing these challenges, that once you're done with them, 10-day immersions, whatever, you need the help and support and education, because you're going to be changing what you've been doing for for most of us, 50 years, 60
Right.
years, whatever. So you're going to be changing a lot of that, and you're going to have questions. You're gonna have questions. So you need to have some place where you can go to get those questions answered. Not only that, but this education and how to break it down into small steps. And that's where, my background in education, I've just kind of pulled it all together in one place. So people can get educated. And it's not just for people that are newbies, to start the steps of going plant-based. Even people that have been plant-based but still have backslid and need that support, because we meet. I have 2 times a week that we meet, that you can come to one or both, and they're recorded, so I make that available. We have a private group where we connect with on a day-to-day basis. I post information, I post videos, I post recipes, just so that you have a continuous feed of plant-based education. And then when we connect on a weekly basis, we connect with this coaching. And so it's huge. It really is. And
So has that been growing beautifully for you? How is that moving?
Yeah, it has been growing slowly. I mean, I just launched it not that long ago, but It's growing slowly, just getting the word of mouth and hearing about it. So I started that program because I know people need that help and support, because for me, and one person, Dr. Lee Ettinger, shared this with me, and it really brought clarity to me. He said there's people that are intrinsically motivated and then other people that are externally. And so if you're an external, for example, he says, I'm going to have somebody take care of my car. I don't want to have to go spend the time to learn how to take care of my car. They become incredibly complex. So I'm going to outsource that and have somebody take care of that. But I'm intrinsically motivated when I want to learn about my food. And I thought, that was really profound, because, there's people walking into his, practice that just want the pill. Okay,
Right.
fine. Here's your pill. But if, and he talks about it, and he's like, but if they're not intrinsically motivated to want to change that, then I will provide that external support for them, through drugs and whatever. But I will talk about it for a little bit, but if they don't want to hear about it, okay, fine. But he does bring it up and he does talk about it, whereas most doctors don't know about that, But I thought that was a great point about him, versus internal versus external.
Yeah, it's very important. And so you're providing really a hands-on platform, because I know you do food prep, you share recipes, and people need that kind of visual, practical connection. And I think it's fantastic. That's one of the benefits of online, that you can reach large numbers of people with really incredibly great information that's practical for them. So what motivated the Cape Cod thing? I know you love Cape Cod. It's your happy place. I know that. It's actually a happy place for me too. I love it there. So what motivated the plant-based Cape Cod? Because that's now more of an in-person kind of thing, or how does that work on Cape Cod for you?
So there's a couple things, if people want to come to the Cape, because it's, as you know, how exquisitely beautiful. I mean,
it's remarkable. Yeah, it is. It's remarkable.
I mean, I pinch myself every day that we've made it here. So people want to learn about where to go, what to do, and all of that. I could be like your tour guide. So that's kind of that. But also we started the plant-based, we call it Plant-Based Cape Cod, that it's now a pod group for Plant Pure Nation. So we have a local meetup group, and we have a restaurant campaign going. So we're starting with that through Plant Pure Nation, so that we are getting more restaurants on board, and it's exciting. So I'm doing a lot of local things in the libraries and showing films, showing movies, doing lectures to help spread the word. So it's
have you found that the mindset on Cape Cod has been expanding in terms of vegan and plant exclusive, more restaurants, more options? Talk about that a little bit. Is that changing?
It is. I mean, obviously we're dealing with seafood a lot, here on the Cape, well-fleet oysters, and, so that we're going up against that. So, but there are restaurants now really starting to offer options. And so, through Plant Pure Nation, they have the restaurant campaign. So they have an interactive map, so you can go on and look and see where, restaurants actually are they offer options that are whole food, plant-based, oil-free. And so, we're starting to get that map going. And so we just started our campaign a couple of months ago. And so we're starting to get restaurants on board. So I'm very excited about that, because we can go and actually have a meal out and not have to worry about it hurting us, without begging.
Gina, you mentioned it briefly, but let's go back to it. How did you and Dr. Shapiro find each other to make this incredible Pregnancy Advantage, which is a remarkable program? I was fortunate to be part of it a little bit myself, but talk about the evolution of that and how and why you feel that's important. I love Deborah. She's fantastic. She's amazing. Talk about how that came to be and what it's really doing for people.
Well, when Nancy and I were doing these, 10-day challenges and things like that, she had connected with Deborah. She was on the West Coast. And as you can, she's an OBGYN. And at that time we were focusing on menopause, because a lot of our women were going through, menopause and, the treatment and whatnot, and dealing with menopause through plant-based. I mean, I hardly had any symptoms as I went through menopause, hardly at all. And so we started doing interviews with Deborah, and then we started talking about children. And she was starting to see a lot in her practice as an OBGYN. She actually figured out this one woman who had miscarried not once, twice from mercury poisoning. And she figured that out, okay? She dug deep into why this woman was miscarrying. And so she got her to stop eating fish and went, on a plant-based diet, was able to conceive. So she started putting two and two together. She's one of the few that really has put that together. And so we started talking, and I was like comparing about how I was seeing this in the classroom. And once I started getting kids to go off of, the SAD diet and getting them onto it, I could see changes. I got kids off of ADD medications or ADHD medications. I mean, it was amazing how quickly they started to heal once you put the right fuel in. And so we started talking about it, and I'm like, if we could just reach the mothers, before, first of all, they don't call it labor for nothing, getting your body ready for that. We want women to come into the program so before they conceive, so that we can clean the body up, get rid of the toxins. And now my big thing is on EMFs, and all that we're being exposed to there. So we really help, to try and get them to, in your environment, to really look at that, like not put your cell phone on your body, things like that, especially in your pocket, right by your reproductive organs,
right.
Especially women. I've seen women sticking their cell phones, into their bras. Really? Stop it. So, we teach them about that. We teach them about the toxins. We teach them about the food and the nutrition. And so that's a big part of it, to get women to understand that their babies are only going to be as healthy as they are. Red Cross had done a study on umbilical cords and found, I think it's like close to 200 chemicals. I mean, the baby's not even an hour old, and they've already got toxins in their bodies from the mother. And so, we really want to help the women clean their bodies up before they get pregnant. My stepdaughter was beta tested the program for us. We were like one module ahead of her, as we were going through. And so from the time the shields went down, she got pregnant in 6 weeks. So I'm very proud of that. And
that's fantastic. So is that ongoing? Are you still doing that?
Absolutely.
So how does it play now? Because I know originally you did kind of like a summit for that.
Right.
And so how does it operate now? Is it a focus group, or how do people access that?
So we meet once a week,
Right.
and have conversations and, discuss where you are in your journey and how we can help you, because you're going to have questions, especially because Deborah is amazing in terms of helping, women to understand their blood work, the vitamins, the nutrients. She's fantastic for that. My role is to helping them with recipes and cooking and, the toxins and the personal care products, and making sure that your environment, you smell like we had people come over to do some work in our house, and I had to go out, and I came back in and they were there. I could smell them coming in the front door. They were in the basement because the chemicals on their, clothes from laundry detergents and
Yeah.
things like, dryer sheets and stuff like that. You think that's a great smell. No, that's all pure chemicals.
Right.
And it's a double vector, especially because the clothes is sitting against your skin, but you're also breathing it. So you're getting it a double whammy, that way. And it just makes me crazy, to see these kinds of things. So we teach and we educate about things that you wouldn't even think about. Candles in your environment, those plug-ins, those air freshener plug-ins. No. So we teach them a lot about this and teach them about nutrition and help them. So we did a summit, which you were part of, and we're doing another summit coming up this fall again. And, so the summit kind of helps people to be aware. I mean, you can still buy, the first summit that we did, which is so powerful. I mean, stories of women, like, for example, stage 4 endometriosis. One woman, 27 years old, 27. And she's like stage 4 endometriosis. And they were going to do a full hysterectomy on her. And I'm like, oh, wow. And the mother was like, no, I want grandchildren. Don't take out her reproductive organs, please. And so the mother started her on basically a plant-based diet. And she literally, they couldn't schedule surgery for whatever reason for like 6 weeks. So she'd been on a plant-based diet for like 6 weeks. She literally was on the table under anesthesia. He got in there and said, wait. He literally brought her out of anesthesia and said, what are you doing? And she's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you're healing. And he had the base to say, I am not going to do this surgery.
Wow.
She went on to have 3 children.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Jeanne, let me ask you a question. I know these women that are, they're dealing with pregnancies or they're trying to conceive, and many of them have their own OBGYNs and their own primary docs. Is there any backlash with any of those people in terms of the program you're doing with Deborah, or do you interface ever with any of these docs, or how does that work?
We don't interface with their doctors because they're doctors. We help them to try and build their team, because especially to plan for pregnancy, especially as they're getting ready to conceive, especially if you're coming to us before you're trying to conceive, so that we can clean your body up. We have a program to help you to build your team, because we're not your team. What we're going to do is guide you along. And especially for people who have questions, what questions are you going to ask your doctor? Because the OBGYN where they are is going to be the one delivering the baby, or if they're going to,
Well, let me rephrase my question. So I think it'll be more clear. So when they get information from you, obviously they're going to share what they got from you with the people that are taking care of them. Has there been any problem in terms of backlash of that, where docs are saying, nah, don't listen to those, they don't know what they're talking about? Or, sometimes they roll their eyes when you're making these kind of very supportive lifestyle considerations and choices. And a lot of these specialties in medicine just think like, nah, none of that's important. None of that matters. So has there been any backlash or problems with your guests having that kind of backlash from their own physicians with the information that you share?
No, because I think the research is there. We've not had, once they've gone to their OBGYN and shared that they're on this, they're like, great, you're cleaning up your diet. Wonderful. Not questioning, any kind of nutrition or anything else, because I think they're not trained in that.
Well, you got a lot on your plate. Are you taking care of yourself?
I am. And one of my favorite things is just walking the beaches and getting out into the woods and kayaking and biking. And so, and that's another reason yet I'm stepping out of the classroom, I think, at the end of June. So, because I really just want to focus spending my time here and then getting out on the Cape, because I'm not getting out enough, I think. But yeah,
Jeanne, do you have any, as we wind this down, do you have any final words you'd like to share with the audience out here?
Well, going plant-based can be tricky. People think, oh my God, I can do this. Yeah, it's fine. But you're going to have questions. And I think you need to find somebody that you can connect with that can help you, whether you're doing something like a water fast down in, Deerfield Beach, under your supervision to get the toxins out to help it, speed that up. But once you leave something like that, you're going to need the help and support. So finding that group, either like a pod that meets up so that you can connect. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things is connecting with other people that are doing this. I mean, my friends have changed dramatically since I went plant-based. I mean, I still have friends, from my I call it my previous life, but I still have friends, and we just don't talk a lot about food. They know where I am and what my beliefs are, because, if you know me for 10 seconds, you're going to know I'm plant-based, and, I start talking about it. But we don't talk a lot about food. They know where, if they have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But we, look at our friendship there. But the people that I'm with now, I spend a lot more time with them, and you're changing and being around people that are going to be supportive and think like you. And you don't have to, we just talked about this the other night, when I was with a group of people, and we're like, we don't have to explain, and everybody knows like what you're bringing is going to be whole food plant-based, no oil, and usually salt-free for me. So yeah. So it's finding that group, that support community, whether it's through a church, you could start something through a church, or you could start a pod through Plant Pure Nation, or finding or connecting with me. I'm happy to help you, transition on your journey. I think of myself, you've seen the movie, right? Wizard of Oz, right? I think about Dorothy. She just landed, her house landed on a witch. She comes out and she's now in color, Technicolor. And she's looking at all these weird people and it's like, did I just have an acid flashback? What's going on here? And so she's looking at all these weird people and she just wants to go home. And they're like, yeah, we got no GPS. There's no signals. There's no cell phone out here. Go see Oz. He can help you. And so she starts on this road. And she's got a witch throwing fire bombs at her. She's got these winged monkeys that pick her up and take her, in the opposite direction, which I think is like the keto or paleo. They're going in the wrong direction and they're going to hurt themselves. So I think of my role as going, come on over here. We're going to go. I got a path, a shortcut for you to get to Oz. And so I think of being plant-based as
well. Jeanne, you're bringing a lot of color to people's lives. There's no question about it. I can't thank you enough for taking this time to share your time and expertise. And I encourage our audience to follow Jeanne. Her locations, her sites will be in our show notes. I really encourage you to follow her. There's so much information she has to share and so many things that can really help you transition beautifully into this wonderful plant-exclusive lifestyle. And I want to thank all the people out there, because without you, we can't do this. I can't do this. And I want to thank you for being such a wonderful part of this active community. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. I thank you for being with us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Health Science Podcast. You've been listening to the Health Science Podcast, brought to you by the National Health Association. Thank you for joining us today and for your commitment to evidence-based health science that backs a whole food, plant-exclusive lifestyle and contributes to the well-being of all people, animals, and our environment. I'm your host, Dr. Frank Sabatino. Be sure to leave a rating and a review, and we'll see you on the next show.